All right. So then how do you do it? One of the reasons why I wrote Made Known Loved is I got so many emails asking how to do something, right? How should we do? The most common question, I laugh about this, most common question, and some of you might be putting this in the chat right now. I want to know about sleeping arrangements and housing at your camp. How did you do that? How do you group kids together? Who do you keep apart? Who do you group together? Stuff like that. And there's always a big, like, it depends. One of the big it depends is, what are your values, right? What is most important to you? The logistics about how we're going to group people, what sleeping arrangements are, what kind of programming we're going to do, what we're going to talk about, really should be determined by what is the most important for you as a community, right? So another way to ask that is, why are we doing it this way? You probably already have a standard practice, things that you are doing or leading. And just to put an examination on that, it's like, what's the purpose of this? What are we trying to accomplish? What assumptions exist within the way that we run this? Sometimes we look at it and realize our assumptions are that we don't have LGBTQ youth. Maybe our assumptions are that all the boys are going to be attracted to all the girls. I don't know. How many of you, I should open the chat here for this question, put a note in the chat if you have ever said the phrase or maybe heard the phrase, boys are blue, girls are pink, don't make purple. That has been a cutesy shorthand youth ministry phrase that I have heard in time. There's a lot of assumptions behind that, right? And some of those assumptions are incorrect, and we can examine and talk about that. And then to say, oh, if what we're really trying to say is, please don't have sex at church camp, maybe a better rule is, don't have sex at church camp, which is a rule that would comply for everyone, not just something that makes some of these particular assumptions. And then also, of course, what do we value, right? What do we want to do? For us, that might be sharing the gospel. For some of us, that might be seeing youth as a mission field, helping youth to grow into spiritual adults, right, that are strong. So our assumptions can a little bit be based on that. So potential values it could have, right? Faithfulness. We are trying to build faith. We want people that are faithful. Maybe a value is privacy, right? We want people to feel safe and secure in community, and maybe beyond privacy, I should say safety. It's probably a better word too. Privacy is a part of safety. And when your privacy is violated, you don't feel safe. So I should level that up a little bit. Authenticity. Are you being the person that God made you to be? Self-identity. Do you get to tell us who you are, or am I telling you who you are? And even transparency, right? These logistical questions that we get, there are reasons why we do it. And sometimes if we just say, here's the reason why we did what we did, can also explain, here's the process, even if it's not the most ideal solution, right? And so we can talk about, transparency as, here's why we did what we did. And then if it needs to be tweaked and changed, we can do it. But people at least can be partners with us on how we build that so we can accomplish those same values. So some that we have for ourselves at the Naming Project, right? All campers should feel safe at our camp and in our programs. Everyone should have a reasonable expectation of privacy, even while we know that we are living and functioning in community together. We don't give people absolute privacy. That's kind of isolation. People do interact, people do share sleeping spaces, right? And then the other guideline that we have for ourselves, which is adults, when campers, or frankly, anyone is talking about themselves and telling us who they are, we are going to listen to them. And we are going to believe that what they tell us is true, and we are going to treat them accordingly. That seems really simple, but I will say it can be really tricky sometimes to do. Because often as adults, we feel like we know better who they are than the youth themselves. We know what their future's like. Even me, as a gay adult, I see a young person, I'm like, oh my goodness, you're just like me. You're going to grow up to be. The reality is they're not just like me, right? They are growing up in a different time, in a different generation, in a different geography, with different spaces. And maybe I can see some parts of myself in them, but also, they are independent people that are going to have to tell me who they are, and maybe sometimes break those expectations that I have for who they are. And then if they tell us something, and sometimes for young people, this happens at our camp, they'll say, this is who I am. We'll say, okay. And they'll come back next year and say, you know what? I've lived a little bit of life. I've realized this, and actually this is more accurate to who I am. Then we say, okay, we're going to adjust to this new thing of what you told us, because you are learning who you are in that process, which is what adolescence really is. All right, so these values determine logistics, right? We want to build these policies and procedures so that they will minister to people. We don't just try to fit people into our policies and procedures. We may not have built our programs, our rules, our ways of operating with LGBTQ youth in mind. We may not have realized that transgender people were a part of our community, or gay or lesbian or bisexual or non-binary or anyone else. And so we say, if this rule, if this guideline doesn't serve our purposes, then we have to find a different way in which to operate. So I'm going to go through these are some of the logistics, right? Questions to ask yourself, forms, registration forms, right? What information do you really, really need? We don't ask campers what their sexual orientation is. That really isn't necessary for me to figure out groupings or sleeping arrangements or anything else. Maybe they will tell us that, but if they don't, I don't have to pry and ask that, right? We do ask for gender. But what we do is what you see here on the slide is that we make it a blank. Instead of a checkbox, do you fit into one of these boxes? I give a blank and I will say, tell me what your gender is. And then when I get the registration forms, I can look at that, and that is how I can do groupings. We still group our campers based on roughly on gender, but I have to know how many youth I have, particular gender, to figure out what the best grouping is going to be. How many blanks for parents? This is not just an LGBTQ thing, but parents that are divorced and remarried might mean that there are multiple adults. And I'll be honest, for safety purposes, we have 3 blanks for parents, parent 1, parent 2, parent 3, and then I have 2 more blanks for non-parent emergency contacts. And my reasoning for that is, if God forbid, something terrible happens and I have to rush a kid to the hospital, I am calling everyone I can until I can reach an adult that is connected to this child, right? I want the parents involved, and if I can't get the parents right away, I want who the next point of contact is. I want that information. How are parents identified? I mentioned this here. We do parent 1, parent 2. And like I said, it's the kind of the order I'm going to go down. Who should I be calling first? Who should I be calling second? Mother and father, obviously, is an assumption the child has both a mother and a father, as opposed to 2 mothers or non-binary parents, right? This lets them talk about what their relationship is, again, without having to fit the parents into a mold that I already have.